President Roman and honorable members of the Board of Regents, Chancellor Presi, members of the UP Baguio community, our hosts for this afternoon's event, officials of the University of the Philippines who are here with us today, faculty members, staff, alumni, and fellow students of this university in all its 9 campuses today. Distinguished guests and friends, ladies and gentlemen, we can get rid of that. I know it will be a warm, lovely, and welcoming day. Weather today in Baguio is simply incredible. It is a rare and wonderful opportunity, and most certainly a great honor, to participate in the celebration of an institution's centennial celebration. I thank President Roman for asking me to be one of the lecturers in this series. The idea for these centennial lectures, as I recall, was first suggested by our colleague, Art Studies Professor Edru Abraham of the College of Arts and Letters in Diliman. Edru was obsessed with the question, if we had the chance as an institution to live the last 100 years all over again, what might we do differently? At first blush, it may seem like an idle question that only academics can think of asking. But when I thought of it, I realized that the question really forces us to revisit UP's defining attitudes as an institution, its understanding of itself, its intuitions about its mandate. Perhaps to suspend these momentarily, if we can, so that we, its present participants, may begin to see this institution in the context of the time and society in which it took shape as a university. To be aware of this, I believe, is a good starting point for imagining what the university can be or might be in the next 100 years. In this lecture, I take the perspective of an insider, a participant observer, and reflect upon the life of the University of the Philippines using as a conceptual guide Niklas Luhmann's theory of modernity. I entered UP as a freshman 47 years ago in 1961 and have lived, studied, and worked in the university ever since, as a student, as a teacher, as a faculty regent, as a campus resident, an UPSCAN, a fratman, a student council member, an administrator, and occasionally as a dissident. I like to think this gives me enough right to offer an inside view of the institution whose centenary we celebrate this year. In this lecture, I meditate on UP's many battles and shifting identities, its perplexing capacity to produce heroes and heels, democrats and despots among its graduates, wondering what it is about our university that best describes its basic loyalties. And I think I have found the answer in this, namely, its quest for autonomy, its fidelity to the ideals of debate, criticism, and free inquiry, its almost instinctive opposition to any form of orthodoxy or fundamentalism, and its abiding refusal to be harnessed as an instrument to any totalizing objective. These traits belong to what I call the autopoiesis of modern academia, a movement that starts from an institution's gradual differentiation from its environment and progresses towards the formation of a complex, decentered, and self-referential system within an increasingly functionally differentiated society. I know that is quite a mouthful. I hope that the rest of the lecture will clarify what I mean. It is almost a trite thing to say, I think, that the University of the Philippines has evolved over the years, reflecting the twists and turns of the larger society in which it is embedded. As Philippine society has changed, so indeed has UP. The UP's operational system is vastly different from what it was during its 50 years. Our mode of governance is, I believe, less hierarchical. There was a time when the dean of a college was like an archbishop, and the UP president was like the Pope, highly revered and awesome. Our structures today are more complex, functionally differentiated, and decentralized. These systemic changes are important, but I will not deal with them here. I will focus instead on UP's changing self-definitions as a university. In short, its culture. The narrative I develop in this lecture is informed by three basic insights. Namely, number one, I believe the history of UP is in the first instance the story of how it negotiated and continues to negotiate the tension inherent in its name, University of the Philippines. That is, the tension between its aspiration as a modern university, on one hand, with academic excellence as its constant refrain, and on the other, its identity as a Philippine institution with social relevance as its battle cry. Number two, the history of UP is a story of the continual assertion of its independence against any attempt to reduce it into a tool for any agenda outside itself, be this political, economic, religious, or ideological. And finally, I think the history of UP is also the story of how it has managed these tensions through the relentless quest for autonomy, first, vis-a-vis the pressures of the society in which it must make itself useful, and secondly, vis-a-vis the resistance inherent in the very traditions it generates. In sum, it is a story of how an institution has tried to draw its life from the society that nurtures it, while consciously drawing the line between itself and this society. It is a narrative of autonomization and self-assertion, of the ceaseless struggle of an institution to distance itself from its beginnings as a colonial creation, to shield itself from the recurrent intrusions of a state that pays its expenses, to establish its secular credentials in a society whose notions of right and wrong, of truth and falsity have been massively shaped by a dominant religious culture. All these while trying to maintain its relevance to a modernizing society whose long-term interests it is supposed to serve. You know, the UP could have been just like any other university of its time. But its founders insisted on building a new type of university, a modern university. For that, we must credit the Americans who conceived the University of the Philippines from the start in the image of a modern university, performing a vital role in the modernization of the rest of society. This is crucial, as I will try to show. Niklas Luhmann, the German sociologist, interprets modernity as the differentiation of society into self-reproducing functional spheres: law, justice, politics, economics, religion, science, etc. In contrast to early forms of societal differentiation like stratification and segmentation. Following this definition, we may say that the emergence of the UP as a modern university is synonymous to its struggle to assert its autonomy as a center of learning, operating according to its own distinct codes and programs, while seeking to establish a strong presence in its societal milieu. UP was to be modern, not only in the sense of a school offering specialized training in the new disciplines, but modern in the sense of being secular or non-sectarian. That is, open to every qualified individual, regardless of sex, race or ethnicity, social class, religion, and political persuasion. That is something new. Modern too, in the vital sense of being autonomous and differentiated from the society that it must serve. This was possible only where the state would provide explicit guarantees of the university's institutional autonomy from ecclesiastical or state authority. Such guarantees made it possible and obligatory for the university to choose its own faculty, set its own admission criteria and graduation conditions, determine its own curriculum, and function according to its own standards. Perhaps the substance of the university's modernity is best captured in the phrase academic freedom. This phrase defines the spirit of the university as the freedom of inquiry to be enjoyed by its students and faculty, as a right to be enjoyed by the institution itself. Academic freedom meant the university's right to determine for itself, solely on academic grounds, who may teach, what may be taught, how it shall be taught, and who may be admitted to study. The enjoyment of that freedom depends in large measure on the capacity of the institution to draw its sustenance from society in return for performing a role in the social division of labor, while protecting its academic prerogatives from intervention by the dominant institutions and forces of that same society, in particular, church and the state. In short, academic freedom meant the assertion of autonomy within the society rather than against it. The University of the Philippines was not designed to exist as an isolated oasis of wisdom in some small corner of Filipino society. Rather, it was intended to be from the start a source of dynamism in the very center of Philippine society, autonomous and free, but lodged within society and fulfilling a relevant societal function. As it happened, these modern credentials conferred upon it by the American colonial government gave UP a strong shield with which to resist interventions from the colonial state itself, from the Filipino elite, as well as from the influence of a dominant church. To underscore its independence, UP, in the era of colonialism, became the bastion of nationalistic and anti-colonial ideas. In an elite-dominated society, it nurtured socialist seeds. In a culture tied to a hegemonic religion, it became a refuge to an antagonist, to an agnostic form of liberalism. During martial law, it became the seat of dissidents promoting democratic, anti-fascist, and participatory ideals. And let us not forget, at that time, revolution as an alternative career. Today, in the present era of neoliberalism, UP wages a desperate battle to free some cherished values from the forces of the global market. UP has asserted its autonomy by cultivating all these adversarial identities at various stages in its emergence as a modern university. Such identities as have resulted from the university's historic battles for autonomy have ripened over the years into traditions uniquely associated with the University of the Philippines. What are these? Nationalism, secularism, socialism, democracy, political activism, and let us not forget that special brand of UP chauvinism. How UP tries to be faithful to all these, while aspiring to uphold the primary academic values of scholarship and academic excellence, of debate and relentless critical thinking, is again